All right, so let me know if this has ever happened to you. You just created a bunch of amazing images, you drug them all back into Lightroom, you zoomed them into 100%, only to find out that, wah, 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 they're all out of focus. Does that sound familiar? Because man, did that sound familiar to me. Back in the day, I was plagued by a multi-headed Hydra-like focus beast, and each one of those different heads was a different problem waiting to bite me in the butt on every photo shoot. Now today we're going to go ahead and teach you how to slay the multi-headed Hydra-like thing, and holy crud have we gotten violent. But at the end of this video, I promise you that you will have the tools necessary to overcome a ton of different focus issues, and hopefully you can do it for free. So let's go ahead and get started with number one. Okay, so the first thing that anybody will tell you when you're having focus problems is to go get yourself a quality tripod. And that is when I look them deeply in the eyes, I very gently reach over, and I slap them across the face, because there is no scenario in the world where a 1-year-old who is smashing a birthday cake is going to just sit there and wait for you to set up your stupid little tripod so that you can get the shot. By the time you got that thing set up, they are moving, they are grooving, and they are gone. Now for the rest of you, tripods are definitely the first place that I would go looking if I were having focus issues. Stabilizing that camera and keeping it as stable as possible with a quality tripod is definitely the best way to start working on your focus problems. Now, the key word there that I want you to hone in on is quality. Okay, if you get a cheap tripod, that thing is going to shake all over the place and you will have just wasted money. What you need is a sturdy yet light enough tripod to carry around, but again, something that is sturdy to hold your camera stable so that every time you push the button or you lean on it, it won't jitter the camera like crazy and cause you to have an out of focus image. Now, if you guys need help finding a quality tripod, of course, I've got some affiliate links down below where you can help us because they are affiliate links, but more importantly, I can point you guys in the direction of a tripod that is actually going to do the job for you. So check out those links. You don't have to buy, but definitely start looking at the specs on those tripods so that you know what a quality tripod looks like. For this next one, you and I are going to have to get real. I need to ask you a personal question. Are you, being a cheapskate when it comes to investing in your lenses? Now, if you are, I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that that may just very well be the issue you're having with out of focus images. Because honestly, when you buy a cheap lens that, let's say has a cute little name like the Nifty 50, or perhaps you picked one up for under $100, what you're buying is an inexpensive lens made with cheap parts, and those parts, well, they just can't focus as well as high quality lenses. So what I want you to do instead is I want you to start looking at your lenses as investments, because a lot of times these lenses are going to stick with you your entire career, and a good quality lens can really end up making you a lot of money later in the sales room. So start looking at buying high quality lenses as an investment in your future as a photographer, and get rid of those Nifty 50 lenses. They're horrible. Now I want to talk to you guys about bracing your camera on something. So if I'm out on a senior portrait shoot, I'm more often than not smashing this camera up against a wall or something really solid, and that stops the vibration. Every time you push the button, that stops all that movement and it gives you more images in focus. So if you're out in the wild taking pictures, I want you guys to start looking for anything stable: a wall, a dumpster, the roof of your car, your assistant's back. It doesn't matter. As long as it's solid and it can keep that camera still, then go ahead and do that, and it will save you from having to use one of those damn tripods we talked about earlier that I call creativity killers. This will allow you to freehand and get more of your images in focus. Raising the shutter speed. Now, that's something that might actually be the culprit. This might be what's plaguing you. So what I want you to do is to grab a bunch of images, drag them into Lightroom or Photoshop, and go ahead and take the out of focus ones and look at the data and find out what shutter speed you are using. And if you are anywhere below, say 1/60th of a second, you might actually have a shutter speed issue and not a focus issue. So go ahead and raise your shutter speed. Now, the reason you're going to need to do that, of course, is because when you have a low shutter speed, like if I were to put this camera into, say, 1/10 of a second, that's my shutter speed. Now that shutter inside, it's gonna open, and it's gonna be open for, you know, a very long time. Now, we think of 1/10 of a second as being quick, but 1/10 of a second with that shutter speed being open is just enough time for your breathing, or, you know, your hand to jitter when you push the button, and that motion will be captured in the image. And so my recommendation again is to raise that shutter speed. Now, there is a little trick that a lot of professionals use, and a lot of you already know it, but for those of you that don't, what I want you to start doing is, right now I've got a 50mm lens on this camera. Now, if I were to go out and use it in the field, I would want my shutter speed to be above the focal length of my lens. So if it's a 50, then of course I'm gonna want to set my shutter speed at least the 1/60th of a second, and that's it. I won't go any lower than that. Now, what if I'm using this guy right here? This is a 70-200. Where am I gonna set my shutter speed? Well, you're gonna set your shutter speed at the maximum focal length of this lens, which is 200. It zooms all the way out to 200. So in that instance, you're never gonna want your shutter speed to drop below 1/200th of a second. So every time you change your lenses, go ahead and just remember that you don't want your shutter speed to be below the maximum focal length of your lens. Now, I can honestly tell you that with today's cameras, especially these mirrorless cameras, it's pretty easy to fool yourself into believing that you could shoot one-handed, be all woohoo, namby-pamby about it. But the reality is, guys, is that you're gonna have to rein it in, and you're gonna have to get a grip. And what I mean, of course, is a better grip on your camera. Now, the first thing you're gonna do is go ahead and really get a hold of that grip right there and grip it good.
When focus problems come along, you must grip it.
Yeah, there was that. So go ahead and just grip the crud out of that. I mean, really grip it, and then take your next hand and put it right under that lens and really get a good tight grip on that. And you're gonna go ahead and take the camera and you're gonna drag your elbows back to your body until they make contact with your chest. And now you're gonna go ahead and bring that viewfinder up to your forehead. And all of those points of contact, your forehead with the viewfinder, your hands on the lens and the body, your elbows on your own chest, all of those points of contact are gonna go ahead and minimize the amount of shake that happens when you push the shutter button. And that should really solve a lot of your focus issues. So a follow-up to that one is, of course, to control your breathing. So we're gonna go ahead and bring the camera up to our eye, and what I want you to do is practice this. I want you to take a little breath, hold it, push the button, and then exhale. Because what happens is when we are chasing around our client and we are maybe a little out of shape and we're huffing and puffing because, well, we didn't go to the gym for like ever, then controlling your breathing, doing that little trick that I just showed you, that inhale, hold your breath, push the button, and then exhale. By doing that, what you're doing is you're controlling the movement of your chest, which when you have your elbows up against your chest and your camera all locked in, if you're breathing really hard, it's gonna move that lens. So control your breathing, do that trick I just taught you, practice it. I swear it will become just a habit and you won't have to think about it anymore. You'll just do it instinctually. But practice that right now and, you know, work on one more way to solve potential focus issues before they start. Moving right along, it is time for me to talk to you guys about learning how to manually focus a digital camera. Now, back in the day, I was a Canon shooter, and my first digital camera was the Canon 20D. And if you go ahead and Google the Canon 20D, the phrase that's going to pop up right next to the name, of course, is critical focus failure. That camera could not autofocus worth a damn, and everybody knew it. But at the time, of course, I was new to photography. I was very young, and, well, translation, I was very, very broke and could not afford to replace that camera. I had to learn how to make it work. And the workaround, of course, was to put it into manual focus mode and just focus manually, right? Which I thought was going to be easy. Turns out learning how to focus a digital camera is a little harder than learning how to focus a film camera. So it is something that's going to require you to put a little time and energy and have a little patience with. But I guarantee you that if you learn how to manually focus your digital camera, it will save your butt at one point or another during your career. So go ahead and get started, learn how to do it, and start today. Go grab your camera and go practice. I promise it'll be time well spent. All right, well, the next issue that could be throwing off your focus is choosing the wrong focus mode to take the picture in. So for example, my camera has a one-shot mode and it also has a continuous autofocus mode. And the one-shot mode is there to capture stationary items like a bowl of fruit on the table. Now, if that bowl of fruit were to sprout legs and start dancing all over the table, then you're going to want to go to a continuous focus mode in order to capture that action. It's as simple as that. Now, if you need help figuring out how to change those modes or what they do, of course, your camera manual has all of that information inside of it. All you have to do is, unfortunately, read the darn thing. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is something that may not be a focus problem at all. And that, of course, is using the appropriate aperture for the subject that you're trying to photograph. Now, if you are photographing groups on a regular basis and those groups are all out of focus and you have to throw those images away, what I want you to do is go ahead and take a look at the data inside that file, and it'll tell you, if you pull it into Lightroom or Photoshop, it'll tell you what aperture you shot that at. And when shooting a group, well, you're going to want to go ahead and use an aperture like f8 at the least, f11, f16, f22, and that's going to ensure, of course, that you get everybody from the front row to the back row in focus. Now, if you're going ahead and using an aperture like 2.8 or 1.4, and you don't have enough distance between you and that group of people you're shooting, it's simply not going to work and your images are going to be out of focus. Now, this last one, it's not a switch you can flip on your camera. It's not a piece of gear that you can buy to help you. What it is I want you guys to start reviewing your images. About every 10 or 20 images, just dive back into the back of your camera, go ahead and zoom in as far as it'll go, take a look at your subject's eyes, and make sure that everything is going the way you think it is. Because I can tell you from real world experience, I swear to God, having to call your client and say,
I'm sorry, all of your images are out of focus because I didn't catch a problem early on, and
yeah. That is an awkward and painful conversation to have with your clients. So avoid all of that. Go ahead and just review your images about every 10 to 20 images so that you know there isn't a problem. And if there is, then you can go ahead and solve it and keep on keeping on. Okay, so avoid having to make a frustrating and painful call to your client and just simply keep tabs on what you're shooting and make sure it's all in focus. So I have one more tip for you guys on today's video, and let's say for the sake of argument that you tried everything on today's list and nothing helped you. Chances are that you have a bad camera body like I did with the Canon 20D, or you may or may not have cheaped out on your lenses. But either way, you're going to have to consider replacing that gear. And when you do, I want you to just not blindly accept advice from strangers you met on the internet like myself. I want you to go ahead and try the gear before you buy it. That is the safest way to avoid costly mistakes, is to try the equipment before you buy it and make sure it works for you. Now, to that end, I went ahead and created a video on where you can do that, and it's going to pop up right over there. So go ahead and watch that video, learn all of the places where you can try gear before you buy it, and some of the places, spoiler alert, some of those places in that video are absolutely free. So go ahead and check out that video. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. My name's Daniel Troutman with the SmashCake.com, and I hope you have a brilliant day. Bye-bye.